Hi, we're looking at Chapter 2, Section 2, Conditionals. And you can see at the top of the page we have our definitions. I do want you to pay attention to the symbolism that's used. P implies Q, or we read it if P, then Q. Also for a hypothesis, we want to use P as the original hypothesis and Q as the original conclusion. Okay, in the first example we have written here, if the skies are blue, then it will not rain. So the hypothesis is the skies are blue. Notice we do not include the word if in the hypothesis. We leave it out. We only use the clause that follows. The conclusion, it will not rain. Well, same thing. We're only going to use the clause as the conclusion. We're going to ignore the word then. Very important for deciding on hypothesis and conclusion. Okay, then towards the middle of the page, we have the types of conditional statements. A converse is formed by switching the original hypothesis and the conclusion. Symbol, notice, Q implies P. If Q, then P. Also notice we're talking about the original conclusion now becoming the hypothesis. Inverses, we negate the original hypothesis. So if not P, then not Q. If we look back up here at this example, that means when we negate this conclusion, it will become, it will rain. Okay, so be careful. If the not's already there, negating it will actually make it positive. Okay, and then the last one is a contrapositive. Oh, notice the symbols also for not. It's like a little tilde. So keep that in mind. Contrapositive, you switch the hypothesis and the conclusion and you negate them. Another way to look at contrapositive is, let me give myself a little bit more space here, converse of the inverse, or you could say inverse of the converse, which sounds a little crazy, but it might help you to remember. Okay, truth values, the last bit of definitions. Equivalent statements have the same truth value. Original, conditional, and the contrapositive have the same truth value. The converse and the inverse both have the same truth value, meaning if the original statement is true, the contrapositive must be true. If the original statement is false, the contrapositive must be false. Okay? So original, true, contrapositive, true. Original, false, contrapositive, whoops, off the paper, contrapositive, false. Okay, so keep that in mind as we proceed. Okay, we're going on to the next page. Okay, on this page we have a couple of examples we're going to work on. You can do one of two things, either stop the video and make an attempt at the statements, or you can walk through this one with me and then stop the video to try the second one. Okay, first example, if it is raining outside, then the sidewalks are wet. Underline the hypothesis, circle the conclusion. Okay, so if it's raining outside, circle the conclusion. Notice again, I left off the word if and I left off the word then. Okay, now we're going to write the converse, inverse, and the contrapositive, and we're going to decide if it's true or false. And would we all agree that the original statement is true? Okay, so the converse is when you switch hypothesis and conclusion. So again, you're going for if P, or pardon me, if Q, then P. So that would become if the sidewalks are wet, then it is raining outside. So, what do you think? True or false? Well, that's actually a false statement. And the reason it's false is if the sidewalks are wet, there are other reasons for them being wet. It may not be raining, maybe the sprinklers are on. So that is a false statement. Okay, the inverse is negating the original. So if not P, then not Q. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and to do that, we're going to say if, and again, we're negating the original. So if it is not raining outside, then the sidewalks are not wet. And that also is going to be a false statement. And again, for the same reason, just because it's not raining, I can't guarantee that the sidewalks are not wet. Okay, contrapositive. The contrapositive is going to be if not Q, then not P. So, to make that happen, well, I'm going to go ahead and pause it and we'll come back and look at it. And by magic, we have the contrapositive written. So if the sidewalks are not wet, then it is not raining outside. And I would have to say that is a true statement. Now I want you to notice that the contrapositive and the original both have the same truth value. The converse and the inverse also have the same truth value. They're both false. Okay. So we are moving on to example 2. You should probably stop the video and try example 2 on your own. And as if by magic, everything has been completed for the example. Now I do want you to notice a couple of things. One, this statement had the hypothesis at the end of the sentence, but notice it's still following that word if. So the hypothesis was at the end and the conclusion was actually at the beginning. So be careful, that happens sometimes. Let's talk about the truth of that statement. That is a true statement. And if you read the converse, we'll see that is also a true statement. The inverse is also a true statement, and the contrapositive is also a true statement. All 4 of those statements are true, and next section we're going to see what happens when that occurs. Okay, the last example on the page is asking you to write this statement as a conditional. Notice there's no if or then in that sentence, so we have to think about how can I take this sentence and create a hypothesis conclusion form for it. All right, go ahead, stop the video, and see what you come up with. All right, here's the sentence I came up with. If 2 angles are complementary, then their measures add to be 90 degrees. Notice, here's the start of our hypothesis, if, and then we have 2 angles are complementary. The then, and then the clause, their measures add to be 90 degrees. Notice also I've done a little bit of doctoring on the sentences, and the same can be true, said to be true of example 2. So you do have a little bit of artistic license in how you form your sentences, just so they sound coherent and make sense to other people. That is it for section 2's notes, and we'll see you in the section 3 video. Thanks.